Yo, what is up, guys? Today we're going to talk about some very helpful stuff in terms of descending tech. I'm going to give you some pointers that beginners and intermediate riders can apply almost immediately to help them gain more control, comfort, and confidence. So here's where we're going to do the majority of our work today as we climb up through it. I know it doesn't look too bad on this camera, but it's way gnarlier in person. This is like a beautiful little descent because there are all sorts of different lines you can take. But we're gonna stick to like a beginner, intermediate friendly line today. So I'm gonna move through this pretty quickly, but try to give you a lot of good, solid information because I'm afraid that if I talk too much, you guys are gonna go straight to TikTok. You're going to search videos and you're gonna get green checkmark, red X videos, and you're gonna feel like you've learned. There are some main factors that you need to keep in mind when you are descending tech. Of course, what we are all afraid of is crashing, right? Going over the bars because we're going downhill. On chunky stuff, our fall over the bars is farther and our landing is a little less comfortable. So when we get that fear in our mind, that controls our body actions quite a bit. And it's that transition from fear to those body actions that aren't proper is where you go wrong. And that's what we're going to talk about, how to clean all that up and ride this stuff confidently. So before you drop in, there are some things you want to think about, and those things are things that are going to stop your momentum. And by momentum, I actually mean your bike's momentum, right? Because your body will always have momentum. If your bike comes to a complete stop, your body's going to keep going forward, and it's going to, you're going to bite on those rocks. We don't want that. So in your mind, you need to think about avoiding things that are going to stop your bike's momentum. We need to keep our bike rolling. There's a huge misconception in mountain biking, and that is the idea of let your bike do the work. Well, let your bike do the work is way different than let your bike work under you, right? You are always in control of your bike. There's no bike that I'm aware of that has enough suspension that I'm aware of and that can ride through anything while you just kind of sit there and sip your Starbucks. That's never the case, right? So you always have to keep in mind that you are doing the work. And again, so you got to rely on proper body positioning to do that. But now let's go back to the idea of keeping our bike's momentum going. So when I ride tech, there are a few main things I think about when I look at my line, or if I'm riding blind, I scan ahead. Pedal clips, things that you will clip your pedal on. This is a little bit of a deeper gully than it looks here, but absolutely, a 5 or 6 o'clock pedal will clip that. And if you clip that with your pedal, it's going to stop your bike's momentum. When you pedal strike something, it not only stops your bike's momentum, but it really disturbs the balance on your bike because it's an asymmetrical impact. So as you scan ahead the trail, always look for things that could clip your pedal or could cause pedal issues, right? So as I ride, I want to look for things that I'm going to clip my pedal on and think about ways that I can avoid clipping my pedal on it. So the other thing that will stop your bike's momentum super quick, and that is things that you will clip and hang up your chain ring on. So when you ride tech, you roll over a lot of stuff. When you let that bike work under you, you're expecting your bike to ride over things and maneuver over things under you. Well, what will stop that quickly is an unexpected chain ring clip. And that'll hang you up right under your bottom bracket. The rule of thumb is if you are not sure if you're going to hang up on something, what you do is you make sure nobody's coming. We never ever want people to hang up on our bodies. We always want to stay out of the way. You can roll your bike and get a pretty good idea if you're going to hang up and what you're going to hang up on. But let's talk about the other thing that you need to be concerned with that'll stop you in your tracks. Right down here. So say I want to roll over this, right? And I know I can roll it because my 29ers will just roll over it. I've rolled stuff like this before, but not everything that's rollable is rollable in the same way. For instance, if you were to roll this, there could be something on the backside when your tire gets off the rock and gets back down to ground or whatever follows the roll that could completely stop your front wheel. It could be a little hole, could be a root, could be another rock. So we need to think about things that are going to stop our front wheel after we roll over a rock. And for that matter, anytime we're riding tech, we have to look for little pinch points or little dips and things that are going to really stop our front wheel. Nothing will yeet you off your seat like a front wheel that just stops. It's like slamming on the front brakes. Listen, I never claimed to be a YouTuber, right? I'm a mountain biker that shares stuff on YouTube. I'm not a YouTuber that shares their mountain biking adventures. The reason why I say that is because my damn audio team forgot our wireless microphones. Honestly, I think they left them at the Kids Bop concert last night. They bootleg Kids Bop concerts and they get all drunk and they leave stuff behind. I'm not going to let the adversity get to me. So let's talk about this concept of letting your bike work under you versus letting your bike do the work for you. So this is us, right? We're this straight thing here. This is actually me, but that's for another video. This is us, and this is our bike under us, right? So when we ride, we kind of want to stay like real balanced and like uninterrupted up here. And to do that, we got to let the bike do its thing under us. But there are things that we can do up here with our body that aid the bike into doing this, right? So we can't just sit here and let the bike do the work for us. We got to kind of move around. So it's a love relationship. We want to approach it like our bike is an extension of our body, right? And not something that we were riding on like a roller coaster and we are just on it for the ride. So a couple weeks ago, I posted a video that talks just about the body positioning that you need to be in to make that more possible. Again, that's you can go check out that video. I'll put it right here. Now in that video, I talk about a lot of what your chest does. I talk a lot about beautiful chests. And I mean, I even sometimes bring them up here on my YouTube channel. What? I used that joke last time? Nobody got it? Cut. Take it off the spreadsheet. Let me know next time. Woo! Okay, so when we jump a bike, I talk a lot about how jumping is like 99% in your feet. You want to think about a jump as like you're on skis or you're just going to pop off a jump on skis. Even if you never skied, that conveys to a lot of people the idea that all the weight distribution is in your feet. When you descend tech, the weight distribution is still in your feet because that balances you on your bike. It balances you over the bottom bracket. But I think in terms of like four-legged creatures when I descend tech, because I want to get low and forward on the bike, but I also want to have control in my upper body. So I'm like a cat when it comes to riding down tech. You know, you're accepting all of these things that come to you, right? You're reaching for these different platforms that you're going to. I think that will put your mind in a good mindset to keep you forward on the bike and keep you kind of low and fluid, right? So we want to be super, super loose because we are actually going to use our bodies for a lot of the work instead of letting our bike do the work, like I said before. So let's get on the bike. We're going to make sense of this, and we're going to really shimmy down this like a cat, or skedaddle down it like a spider, or skadoodle down it like a centipede, whatever. Yo, can you hear me? Okay, so let's look at quickly the idea of letting our bike work under us versus letting the bike do the work for us, right? So letting the bike work for us would mean that our suspension could absorb everything. And really suspension's job is to retain traction, retain your contact to the trail. The byproduct is absorption of impacts and undulations in the trail. Now, if I were to ride into this rock right here, slowly, my fork suspension would squash down a little bit because of my weight. But if I rode it slowly enough, what it would do is it would rise back up again to the sag point. So really, it didn't absorb this rock. What it did was it mitigated the initial impact of the rock. So for us to ride tech successfully, stay comfortable, in control, and confident, we have to do a little bit of the work. Our suspension is way smarter than the suspension on our bikes. Because for instance, our arms can accept the rising rock and stay in that position rather than go back to its sag level, right? So we want to rely on our body suspension more than our bike suspension. And I'm saying all that because your positioning and your thought process is super important to make that work. So as you approach, descending rocky tech, you don't want to be stiff and rigid, assuming that your suspension is going to absorb it. Now, what happens when you are stiff and rigid is your bike's doing this going down the rocky trail, right? All that tech's causing your bike to do this. And when you're stiff and rigid, every time it pitches forward, your weight goes forward and you unweight the rear end. And you have a ton of weight on your front end, and then it bounces you back, and then you shift your weight back, and then your front end gets light. And if you're lucky enough that you don't lose traction on your front end, or your front end doesn't sweep out from under you, you get bounced back to your front. So that listing forward and back action will really impact your control on the trail and your traction on the trail. Instead, what we want to do is think about our body is suspended on suspension platforms. And I talked a lot about that in that video I mentioned earlier. And to do that, we need to know that our arms and our legs are going to absorb a lot of this. So riding over this rock in that manner would look something like this. So let's put you on my full face, not because this is terrible terrain, but because it's going to be a much better camera angle for you to see my point of view from. let's go. So again, the first thing is you want to practice letting that bike come up into your body mass and not rising up with every rock that you go over. You don't want these rocks to like elevate your body mass or pop you in the air. We want them to come up into us. So you can practice that super easily. Again, as always, as I always tell you, knees over toes, chin over stem, booty high, chest up. And we're just going to go slow. And we're just going to let these rocks come into us, okay? Heels down, all the weights, you know, really in our pedals right now. I would say 90% of it's in our pedals, and we're just kind of slinking down through here, and we're letting the bike work under us. We're not letting the bike do the work for us. Okay, see, we're just slinking through here. Here's that rock we just looked at, and I'm staying forward, right? See? Okay. Next thing you want to know is how brakes are going to affect you as you descend. First things first, know this: whatever wheel that you are braking, whether it's your front wheel or your rear wheel or both of them, when you brake, you actually lose traction. Because at a microscopic level, even though you don't know it, your tires are actually losing grip and sliding a little bit. You might not feel it, but oftentimes on steeper stuff, you will feel it. But what's happening is your tires are no longer matching the terrain. You know, accepting the terrain. They're fighting back against it, and that's causing you to lose a little bit of traction. So even if you lose that tiny percentage of traction that goes unnoticed, you lose a little bit of control. Now, oftentimes that's unavoidable, so that's not necessarily a bad thing. But why is that important for you to know is because you need to actively decide which wheel you want to use the brakes for. And a good rule of thumb is whatever wheel that you need the most traction on is the one you want to brake the least. So in this section here, there's a little bit of a chute right there that then turns to the right. I know that I need to use both my brakes as I enter that chute. The ground's real loose, and I can't go real fast careening straight forward because there's a tree there and there are some rocks there I don't want to get mingled up with. So I'm going to have to control my speed. However, I know that I need to go to the right, and I need traction on my front wheel to go to the right. So I want the most traction I can possibly get on my front tire, and that means I brake the least amount with my front wheel as I possibly can and still maintain control, which might mean then I need to brake more with my rear wheel to continue retaining my speed control. So let's take a look at it. So as I come into this, so I'm both brakes right here, I'm losing traction, and I'm going to be off my front brakes right there. And I'm off my front brakes the whole way through that, because I needed that traction on my front wheel, and my tire would roll and match the ground. As soon as I start braking with my front wheel, microscopically and maybe even obviously, my front tire loses traction. It skids a little bit, right? It might drift a little bit one way or a little bit the other way. So in most cases, when you're riding something steep and loose like this and you really need to control your speed so you don't get out of control, you need to use both brakes. So the mindset becomes, what brake do I want to use less in this instance? And oftentimes you're going to find when you're descending, it's your front brake. If you get off the front brake, it'll allow you to steer better. It'll give you more traction. It won't slide on rocks. Also, your front fork, your front suspension is going to work so much better when it's not under a braking force, okay? At braking, I'm gonna ride this slow, and I'll talk about what brake I release, okay? So just assume right now, as I am, I'm kind of gently riding both brakes. Okay, so I'm going to be on both brakes, but I see a turn coming up here. So I'm off my front brake here because I want it to roll cleanly over those rocks. And then I'm back on my front brake a little bit here, off the front brake, back onto it, off the front brake, rear wheel skids, off the front brake. So again, it's just about modulating your front brakes. This could be a whole video in itself, and it might be. But these are just things you need to know as you approach this stuff from a beginner/intermediate level. So braking is important. That's your introduction to braking and when to brake and what to think about when you're braking. Let's talk about the concept of giving with your arms. So theoretically, every rock that I ride over is a rock roll to some extent. It's not your traditional big rock roll that we often think about when we talk about mountain biking, but it's all a rock roll, just on a very small level. Every time I do a rock roll on those very small levels, I'm letting the front end fall away from me. I'm letting the bike drop out from under me, and then I'm kind of matching where it lands, and I'm easing my body into the landing. Kind of like if you got pushed and you fall to the ground, you catch the ground with your hands and you ease yourself into the ground. And what that does is it really creates a well-controlled, smooth transition over rocks. Never will gravity mistime the front end drop. Gravity will always perfectly match the front end drop to the rock roll. So as you ride over things, just let that bike fall away from under you, but don't think about sliding back too much on your bike, right? Because we want to stay centered on the bike. Okay, if we know that we're not going to catch our chain ring like I spoke about earlier, we have comfort that we can ride over these things, then we know that our front end is going to make contact with the ground beyond the rocks safely, and we're going to match it with our body mass and our upper body, and we're just going to kind of guide ourselves into it. By doing that, that also keeps you very well positioned on the bike. It keeps you centered over the bike, and it keeps weight on the front tire. Additionally, if you feel like your front wheel could hang up after a roll or after you ride over a chunky section of rocks and stop you in your tracks, which I mentioned earlier is never a good thing, when you let that bike fall away from under you, you still have strength in your arms to push it through that hiccup, that speed bump in the trail. When we're pitched downward and we are hitting all sorts of rocks and bumps and stuff, it can do crazy things with our body mass. Now, it can remove contact with our feet from the pedals if you're riding flats, but that's easy to gain, it's easy to overcome just by dropping your heels. Is that the same from flats to clipless pedals? Absolutely. Because as much as it is keeping your feet in contact with flat pedals, even on clipless pedals, what heels down will do, it will transfer your squatting motion to your big muscles, your hamstrings and your glutes, and it'll really give you more power to push through the bottom bracket. Whereas if you are on the balls of your feet, if you are toe heavy, then your weight is then controlled by your quads, which are smaller muscles, and then a lot of stress goes into the knees as well. We want to transfer all of that stress, all of that power to our big muscles and our hinging mechanisms in our hips. So again, let's go a little faster. We are accepting with our arms, you know why. We know what we have to think about in terms of braking, now you know why. Letting that bike work under us. So because I'm turning a little bit, I don't want to break my front wheel. So as I go faster, I'm braking less on my front wheel because I need to make quick motions with it. This body positioning, these motions, this fluidity in our body and kind of letting the bike work under us, but promoting what the bike does and where it goes with proper technique. That's kind of the basis for great success when you're riding tech, and you can start off slow. You can start off practicing this slow and on things that are actually not super techy or super dangerous. So guys, this could be like a series of 15 videos really. But I just wanted to give you like general practice of things I think about when I ride like chunky stuff. And then maybe if this video sees any popularity, I'll break this down and talk specifically about each of these concepts and really go into like detail on them. You know, I always appreciate you guys watching. Thanks so much. If you found this video helpful, it means a ton to me if you hit like and subscribe. It just tells the algorithm that it's worth sharing to other people. It's not like a pat on the back for me or anything, but I do appreciate it. It means like all this coming out here is worth it. Because truth be told, I wasn't going to come out today because my back is super stiff. And then when I found out that I didn't have my microphones, that was an excuse for me to get out of this. Riding injured is never a good thing, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Persevere. And I'm here. So anyway, see you in the next one. Peace.